Okay, let's start. Hello everyone, welcome to JA's webinar session. I'm Nina Chang and I'm the marketing executive at JA. It's my pleasure today to host this webinar, and we are happy to have JA CEO Amir here today to discuss how private 5G networks deliver enterprise benefits. This session is designed to be interactive, so don't be shy and feel free to send across any questions at any time through the Ask Questions section on your control panel. Amir will answer all the questions you have after this presentation. So now let's enjoy Amir's talk, and over to you, Amir.
Thanks a lot, Nina. Thanks for that. So hi everyone. The title of the talk is how private 5G networks deliver enterprise benefits. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to kind of set the scene, hopefully, and talk a bit about what 5G and private 5G is and what they are, and compare them to 4G and even Wi-Fi 6 as well. So I'll hopefully be covering some of the basics, and then we will talk about some of the benefits and use cases as well, bearing in mind the kind of amount of time we've got today. So just a bit of a background on me. So my name is Amir. I'm the CEO of JA Limited. We're a managed cloud managed technology and advisory firm based in central London in South Kensington. We've been running for a fair amount of time, and we enjoy some really good success with some really good customers and partners. And you can look us up by all means. We cover a little bit more about us near the end, but we're here to talk about 5G. We're not really here to talk too much about me, but I will quickly cover just my background, so you just know where I'm coming from. And I love business strategy. I love technology. I'm a technologist by education. University, studied computing. Love my family, love my parents. Family's number one. I'm a big believer in empowering people and enabling them to do the best they can consistently. So not in peaks and troughs. Let's try and keep a consistent high level, and that comes through I think good management of people and organizations. I love to see other people succeed, right? I just absolutely love it. So therefore I love mentoring people and giving them advice and hopefully partaking some of the kind of knowledge that I've built up over the years and being able to just be able to help people. Just various hobbies of mine: basketball, snowboard. I used to skateboard back in the day as well. Love gaming when possible. I play golf, and I love driving. Love driving cars. Go do track days and things. That's just a bit about me, just to set a bit of background. But let's get back onto the topic. So you probably know that 5G is revolutionizing the world, right? It's in many different ways, right? We're hearing the term increasingly. We're seeing devices coming out that are 5G ready, but most of us, well, it depends where we are. Many of us aren't actually realizing a lot of those benefits yet. So therefore, it's still a term that we're not terribly, we don't really know what it means. We thought we'd start with this slide, which is a good one that goes kind of back, depending on the kind of age of the audience of this talk. We go back some time, and the aim of this slide is to show you, is as time has gone by, our cellular networks have got faster. But what's happened? They've got faster because of technological advancements. But what have they meant to us? As they've got faster, they've actually allowed us to consume different types of media, and actually ultimately what they've done is that they've unlocked different business benefits, as well as not just business benefits but leisure benefits as well. So if we just look back, for example, at 2G, and we had SMS and we had 0.1 megabytes per second, we had WAP browsers, if some of you remember those. We had WAP web pages and things. Back in the days, not in the 90s, but I used to have something called a Nokia communicator. So I'm not sure. Again, some of you will be familiar with that. Some of you will be thinking, what's Amir talking about? I have no idea. But look up Nokia communicator if you don't know what they are. They were fairly big phones back then. Phones were supposed to be small. That was a trendy thing. But this was a fairly big phone which would flip open. It would have a full-size keyboard. What mobile data allowed me to do was to get on the tube travel to work, I take the Metropolitan line to work, which is mostly overground, and I could travel to work and I could actually view the BBC News website, for example, and I could check money markets. I could do all of my stuff on my Nokia communicator, and I'd be surrounded by people with newspapers. That was the standard. Everyone would have their newspapers. So the point is that as internet, as mobile, as we call kind of mobile internet or connectivity has increased and got better with the different network generations, we've been able to do more and more. And now, as we all know, people on, when they're commuting on the train or the tube, they're watching videos, they're streaming Netflix, whatever it might be, Prime Video, and they're doing all manner of kind of tasks, and that's all been enabled by faster networks. At the most right there, we've got 5G, and the additions are ultra HD video and the Internet of Things as well. We'll cover off the Internet of Things in a bit more detail later, but you can see the key thing there is to see that 5G is humongously fast. Yeah, it's really fast compared to 4G and let alone anything before it. But what is it? What is 5G exactly? So 5G is the 5th generation of cellular mobile communications. Yeah, it's transformative change to the way cellular networks operate. So it's changed. It really has changed the way cellular networks operate. There's some very trick tech, which the tech side I'm not going to go into in a huge amount of detail, but the frequencies and the different kind of modulation techniques that 5G uses has allowed 5G to give us huge speed benefits over 4G, and that's where the big transformation is. And for you to realize that and to actually see that compared to 4G. So if we look in this diagram, if we look at the top left where the download speed at peak, so in brackets we say peak, the download speed is 20 gigabits a second for 5G compared to 1 gig or 1 gigabit per second for 4G. In the real world, so if we look below that, then we'll see that it's 100 megabytes per second versus 10 megabytes per second. So 5G is it's multiple times faster than 4G. The key one that I think everyone should realize, or everyone should look at here, is the latency. So the latency has gone down. So one thing that between 3G and 4G, the latency difference wasn't huge. There was a latency difference, but it wasn't humongous. The latency difference between 4G and 5G is humongous. So we've gone from 10 milliseconds down to 1 millisecond. Now the latency is essentially the kind of round trip time it takes for a request to be kind of a request or some data to go and come back. And that's essentially how fast the initial web page might load, for example. And that is the key factor that allows for nearly, not all of them, but nearly all of the business benefits that we're talking about with regards to 5G and private 5G. It's this latency, or lower latency. The maximum number of carriers is gone up from 16 from 5. That's for general 5G. So as we just said, 5G is faster, so it's faster. These are the numbers that it allows, it potentially will allow us to achieve. So a huge number there, which is 3.35 trillion pounds, so in value, can be unlocked. Say KPMG from 2019, there was a report done in 2019 by KPMG through 5G use cases over the next 6 years across all industries, so across the whole, across everything. And then Barclays, in a slightly different but obviously a 5G related report in 2019, said 15.7 billion pounds in additional revenue could be generated by UK businesses as a result of 5G adoption by 2025. So the point here is not to dwell too much on the actual numbers, but to realize that there is significant business benefit and organization benefit that 5G will bring, and is already bringing, is starting to bring as well. That's the key message of this slide. If we look at this graph here, if you look across to the right, we're looking at time. So we've got our years, and then if we look at our vertical axis, then we're saying that this is the amount of value that we're unlocking in terms of revenue. Yeah. So the first one that you see is the yellow one, which is manufacturing. So we're actually saying that manufacturing is probably one of the first, if not the first industry that will take advantage of 5G, and it will see a fair return in value of that investment in 5G and private 5G. This is both. And you'll see the biggest returns are coming into technology firms, as well as aerospace and defense. So, we're talking about potentially like airports, for example. Again, we'll cover off some of these use cases later as well. But the point is that, there's significant value across nearly every single vertical. Some will come on board sooner, some will come on later. And there are whole studies that go into each of these, which are hugely interesting, because they don't all benefit from the same actual items as one another. If we actually look at the differences between the public cellular network and private 5G, because that is ultimately a very, very important point, because private 5G brings different benefits to the general public network. We look at public 5G. So public 5G is this general network. It's what we use at the moment in terms of like 4G. It's very similar. It's a general network that's designed to work with nearly every single device possible. It's designed to cater for most use cases with regards to data usage, with regards to security. So it's a very generalized network, very good, because it serves so many people and so many organizations and devices. It's very good. But what private 5G allows us to do is allow us to build our own 5G network, and it's private and it's controlled, and we do that literally by having our own equipment. Yeah, so we buy our own 5G equipment, and we put it in wherever we want, whether it be around our office campus, for example, around our airport, or around our inside and around our hospital, for example. And then we have full control over that network. So we can control speeds, we can control security, and we'll come on to those as well. But that's the core, the key difference between private 5G and public 5G. Private 5G just allows us to have all this control, and therefore we can focus our network into serving our business or organization, and we can focus on compliance, security, as well as network usage, for example. And I'll cover those there. So compliance and cellular network performance. What about the difference between Wi-Fi 6 and private 5G, or 5G in general? Sorry. So Wi-Fi 6 is fast, and people say, well, hang on, if 5G is taking over and it's going to give us broadband and it's going to give us this and that, then what's going to happen to Wi-Fi? Isn't 5G or private 5G going to kind of wipe Wi-Fi away? Not necessarily. I mean, I'm not going to go into this slide in too much detail, but what I will do is I'll just focus on the bottom two use case example areas, because I think they're the ones that ultimately help us understand where these two technologies are going to be used more. So, with 5G, some use cases are, for example, autonomous vehicle support, autonomous vehicle control. Now that's over a long distance potentially. As we know, we drive vehicles, 1 mile, hundreds of miles, thousands of miles. So 5G can cover that, because it can cover those distances. Whereas Wi-Fi 6 cannot cover that same area, and it cannot cover that same area with the same level of low latency that we mentioned earlier with the speed. So we can't make quick decisions necessarily. So Wi-Fi 6 is still confined to indoor coverage. It's still relatively cheap. A private 5G network will cost more than an equivalent a Wi-Fi network, but then it will deliver more as well. So there's still a case for Wi-Fi and 5G to live together. So we're not saying that private 5G will completely knock out Wi-Fi at all, actually. I'll just go through all of these. So we've already said that 5G will support use cases that require long ranges, like the autonomous vehicles, autonomous driving. 5G already is offering a broadband alternative to fiber and cable. Vodafone are offering it. A lot of the network operators are offering 5G routers that go in our houses. And if we have 5G, then we can take advantage of those speeds. If we don't, as soon as it comes, we can. And IoT, so Internet of Things and edge computing applications for industries like retail, manufacturing, and healthcare may use both Wi-Fi 6 and 5G depending on the setup. It could be that we have a main campus that's 5G enabled, and then we have some remote campuses that where our private 5G doesn't actually reach, which would use Wi-Fi internally, and we could still do either all of the functionality, achieve all of the functionality that we require, or maybe a portion of it. So coming on to these critical capabilities of private 5G, these are the areas that really give us the kind of business benefits that we're talking about. So the first one is network slicing. So we can picture network slicing as something similar to quality of service. So some of you who are more technical will know the term QoS, so quality of service, where we can prioritize network traffic across our network. So we can say, well, email traffic is priority. So any email traffic on our network, push that through before anything else. And then, maybe our web traffic's the next one, or whatever it might be, but we'll prioritize it. So network slicing on 5G works in a similar fashion, but we can also prioritize devices. So we can set up various sensors, on our network. If we've got an airport or a hospital, for example, we can set up various sensors and categorize them all, and we can say, well, this group have higher priority on our network. They're the ones that are going to get through fast because they're making the real-time decisions. And we can do this all via this hardware that I said. As we buy this private 5G hardware, we can then achieve all of this, the network slicing and the custom configuration, and achieve those benefits through private 5G. We've got a high level of data security. So for the same reason, because we've got our own equipment, we can now customize that. We can implement different security standards, depending on which industry we work in, depending on what kind of compliance we have to adhere to. We can modify our security levels. We can increase and decrease according to what we need. Decreased latency. So this is what we've been talking about so much. Is because of the decreased latency, we can actually now make almost real-time decisions with regards to information that we might be getting from our Internet of Things. We may be doing some edge computing. We can get that data really quickly, and we can make decisions. Yeah. So if we're running ML learning models, we're not going to make decisions quickly necessarily through ML learning models, but we may do through AI. So if we're running an AI platform, we can actually make really quick decisions around autonomous driving. I mentioned earlier, we can make really quick decisions around manufacturing. So if there's a manufacturing fault, we can make quick AI decisions on, right, stop the line, right? Stop the line is a concept in manufacturing. Stop the line, and let's rewind and let's work out what the fault was, and then let's continue the root cause, and let's continue. So this latency, just the low latency allows us to do so much more. The high connection density. So high connection density, when we mention this, we're talking about another use case. So for example, hospitals. One use case that's been bandied around a lot with regards to hospitals is for hospitals to actually keep a tab and keep an audit of all the equipment that they have, because there's a lot of equipment in hospitals that moves around. It moves around the hospital, and it can get lost. We're talking about actually large pieces of equipment like wheelchairs and beds, obviously, and they can get lost, and they do get lost, but also smaller items. So we can track all of these. We can actually tag them, and we can track them on our private 5G network, and we can see where they are pretty much real time. We can track these items. So 5G is very good for that. And then the speed of implementation. So to set up a private 5G network doesn't take long. It doesn't take long at all. You can in theory be up and running in hours, but it's similar in vein to setting up Wi-Fi. There's a bit more to it. It's a bit more complicated. It's not as user-friendly as Wi-Fi. It was taking years to kind of produce wizards for setting up Wi-Fi, but the speed of implementation of private 5G is very fast, and that's a very, very important capability. So not only can we set up permanent fixtures of private 5G, it could be possible to set up temporary fixtures for 5G as well, for events, for example. So here's some good points around you know, when we invest in private 5G, what can we get? So we can enable cloud service providers to reach enterprise mobile customers easily and reliably. So bridging between the cloud and 5G, we can do this much quicker. We can do proper what we might call bridging between cloud and 5G. We can also allow the extension of the cloud of a cloud platform and capabilities to communication networks as well. So in a similar vein to kind of the point one, we can actually reap some really good rewards from being able to have a seamless kind of integration. And then, you know, give the rise to the introduction of new and innovative apps across industries, such as healthcare, as I mentioned before, with regards to tracing and tracking equipment, banking and academia, as well as, I mean, a whole host of others. We talked about airports. We've mentioned airports a few times, and actually, if you remember the graph that we looked at before, transportation and airports were quite high up. The return on investment for them is quite high up. So just an example of a manufacturing use case or use cases, sorry, is that we have ultra low latency. So that allows us to gather all this information. I briefly mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. So, you know, we're talking about different machines, different sensors, different robots being able to communicate very quickly, and therefore, you know, we can make decisions really quickly. That's the most important point. Once we can communicate very quickly, we can actually make decisions very quickly, and you know, we can make almost real time or seemingly real time decisions. And then we've got, you know, the reliability aspect of that as well, because of the reliability of a private 5G network. And you would test these when you're setting up a private 5G network. You would test the reliability of the network using various network tools. But once you've got that, and 5G, by the way, has that reliability out of the box, but there's tuning that you can do. You can then benefit from that reliability, and essentially, you know, what a lot of people are doing is replacing what you would have wires for otherwise. And we mentioned about high volume and high complexity earlier with regards to that hospital use case, but in the case of manufacturing, then it's the same basic principle, where we've got if we've got an AI decision kind of application, then that can be churning out, making decisions really quickly, faster than we do at the moment, faster than we've certainly ever done in the past, where we can improve our processes. So, you know, I mentioned about stop the line earlier, and then stop the line is a fantastic strategy, and you know, this, you know, making real-time AI decisions would only help stop the line in a huge way. It could really increase our output, because ultimately that's what the business benefit would be, is that we would be able to increase our output in manufacturing. So I just wanted to, I'm coming to the end of the presentation, and I just wanted to cover off a brief, just this slide on just a brief note about what we're doing and what we're doing with Verizon. So Verizon is a very well-known brand, as you guys will probably know, and Verizon have a private 5G offering. So we're working very closely, and we've officially partnered with Verizon as well. And we're working very closely with them on private 5G, and not just the private 5G implementations, but all of the benefits that go around it. So I mentioned earlier about making real-time decisions, but real-time decisions are also get fed, and not just real-time, but normal time decisions get fed through analytics. So we're working closely with Verizon around the analytics and integration with cloud with regards to private 5G. So we're doing some really exciting work around that, and if anyone's interested in that, we'd love to be able to talk to you, and we can explain a bit more about what we're doing there. And we've got some really good real life kind of use cases that we're working on. Some really cool ones is a couple ones around COVID, there's some good retail ones that we're working on as well. And like I said, this is a mixture of private 5G as a network, as a kind of network or enabler, and then analytics and cloud that take those benefits and actually give tangible results to the clients and to the end users. So yeah, we're living it at the moment. So that's quite cool. I'm happy to talk to you guys about that. So yeah, and this one of our mottos. We always say to people, focus on your core business, right, and let us advise you, and let us then operate when it comes to technology. We're firm believers that we want you as the organization or the client or the partner to do what you're best at, and we'll do what we're best at. We always say that to people, and I think it rings true to most organizations, most individuals. But yeah, that's without wanting to rush through too much, but that is the end of my presentation. I'm hoping that I've not gone over time. I think I'm slightly under time, which is good. But at this point, I'd just like to say thank you very much. Thanks for listening. If I've gone too fast for anyone, or I've missed any parts, any areas that you guys hopefully wish that I would have covered, then I'd love to get your feedback. We're going to do some questions now. So hopefully you've asked some questions. I'll try and answer them to the best of my ability, and feel free to contact us at any time, and we're happy to talk, happy to have a chat. Thank you.
Hi, great presentation, Amir, and thank you so much for sharing these insights with us. We do receive some questions, but before we start, I want to remind you that this video will be available after this live session. So if you are watching the video recording and you have any questions or is interested in learning more about JA and Verizon's 5G offering, please feel free to drop us an email and we will get right back to you. So let's start with our first question. So Amir, from your perspective, what's the future of 4G and what do you think will happen to 4G?
So 4G, 4G, just like the previous technologies, so previous 3G as well, they will be around. They'll still be around, right? So 4G will still be around. It's not going to be going anywhere soon. And like most of our phones at the moment, if we're not in a very good signal area, we'll notice good signal area, we're in 4G. Then the network degrades down to 3G, and then it degrades further down into previous generation networks. So 4G will always be around. It's not necessarily going to be kind of dismantled and taken apart. There's been a big investment put into the 4G infrastructure around the globe. So it will still be around and it will still serve a purpose. All that will happen is that 5G will become more prevalent. So hopefully we'll be seeing 5G on our phones more often, and we'll benefit from the 5G network and network speeds, but we'll just drop down to 4G in non-5G areas. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the explanation. So the second question is, many people now they are associating a smart city with 5G. So what do you think is a smart city and how will 5G impact our community?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I mean, smart cities, that term, you're right, that term is bandied around quite often. And smart cities are, I mean, essentially connected cities. Yeah. So a smart city will take advantage of things like fiber. Fiber will take advantage of things like 5G, and essentially mean that everything is connected. Yeah. So we'll be able to have autonomous driving. We'll be able to have our utilities easily tracked and billed. And I think the key thing with smart cities is that there's a few buzzwords, right? So few keywords with smart cities. One is autonomy. So you're heating at home At the moment, or actually, I mean, we're already seeing smart city kind of elements entering our homes at the moment. But the traditional way we control heating at home is we have a timer. So we just say, put the heating between, put the heating on, all the hot water on between these times. And also we have a thermostat to say, okay, well, when it does go on, or trigger it to go on according to a temperature if it falls below a temperature. But we might want other control over that. So we might be traveling home, might have been on a journey, for example, coming home to, after a week's time, and we would want to turn the heating on before we arrive, so we can do that remotely, for example. I mean, that's just a small use case, but a big benefit. We can do that now, but that is a smart city kind of benefit. But the key thing there with smart cities is that everything is connected. Yeah, so we have the autonomy, and we also have some capability, remote capability across lots of different resources. So our heating, electricity in our homes, our internet connectivity, all of our devices, so our lighting, our speakers, audio, video, computing, and then that extends out in a smart city, extends out to when we're traveling, when we're moving around. So the transport systems and even vehicles. Ideally, that again, the kind of holy grail of smart cities is that we'd have proper autonomous driving and autonomous vehicles, which again, something like 5G is integral to, because to have true autonomous vehicles and driving, you need to make real-time decisions, and critical real-time decisions, and therefore you need to have a very fast network and a very fast capability within the vehicle and outside of the vehicle. Hopefully that answers some of your question.
Yeah. So you've mentioned like the impact of 5G on transportation. So another question is that how do you think 5G will change transportation? Maybe like some smart traffic lights that can cut congestion, or some more examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So remember, one of the, if we're talking about 5G in general, then 5G allows us to have a low latency and high bandwidth that will reach areas that fiber doesn't currently reach. At the moment, if we want to get low latency and high bandwidth to any location, at the moment, really the only way to do it is through fiber at the moment. And by that it means digging up the roads. There's a big capital investment in digging up roads, getting people in, and it takes time. But the main thing, it costs a lot of money. Hence, we don't have fiber everywhere. So while fiber is also part of the going back to the previous question about fiber is also an integral part of smart cities. If we want, for example, smart traffic lights, as you mentioned, we can now quite easily have smart traffic lights, because we can have low latency connected traffic lights that are connected via 5G. Whereas at the moment, if we want to have smart traffic lights, we have to get some sort of connectivity across to them, which is normally fiber, and that's nigh on impossible to do in a city, because there's just too much investment required. So smart traffic lights can come around due to 5G because of the low latency, because they can all access the 5G network, and the smartness in them doesn't necessarily have to be through edge computing. It can be centrally controlled, potentially, or cloud controlled. But again, we can use real-time decisions. Traffic lights, the way they work at the moment is that they work during certain hours in busy junctions. They work according to times, and then, generally speaking, and then during out of hours on slightly quieter junctions, they're sensor activated, and they're time based, and they have time delays and things. But as you mentioned, smart traffic lights can be triggered via sensors in cars. Yeah, so if we're driving, if there are 20 cars driving towards a junction from one direction and one from the other, then the traffic lights phasing can be adjusted on the fly to cater for these cars to get through in the most efficient way, and that's something that 5G allows. Yeah, 5G allows us to make those decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know, Amir, you are a big fan of car. So what do you think about driverless cars? Do you think like we can reach its full potential with 5G?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. driverless driverless cars. So if we were designing a city, like we were talking about smart cities. So if we're designing a city from scratch, then I think it's definitely a lot easier to be able to at least aspire to having driverless cars. Yeah, there are lots of different challenges to having pure autonomous driving. Some are, in a city like London, for example, which is a very big city, very busy city. Lots of different types of junctions and rules and things. You can model all of those. It doesn't actually matter how complex a city is, because you can model all of those rules. But there are various factors that go into play with regards to autonomous driving. So, for example, decisions around hazards. Yeah, so there's an age-old conundrum with regards to autonomous driving, but it's a conundrum for us as humans as well. Is that if we're driving our car down the road and there's a big obstruction and we're about to crash into a big obstruction in the center of the road, we can only swerve right or left. But on the right side, there's a group of kind of kids finishing school walking, and on the left side, there's an elderly couple who are going for a stroll. Now we're going to hit one of them, unfortunately. And how do we make that decision? So how can a car make that decision? And what's the ethical thing to do, if there is any ethical thing to do in that instance? So these are conundrums that we have in general, but we also have natural conundrums with regards to driverless cars, which 5G actually could help with, because there's a natural one with regards to fog. So autonomous cars use sensors predominantly to kind of know where they are and know what obstacles are around. Now, when it comes to fog, you as we know, fog, we can't see things. So there are sensors that will sense heat, as we know, can sense heat through fog, but not everything emits heat. So we might miss out certain items that might be in fog, and therefore it could lead to an accident. 5G could help with those items, because 5G would give us very quick connectivity to GPS or satellite imagery, for example, weather reports, and that could help. But I think implementing autonomous driving and driverless cars in a greenfield kind of smart city, which are being made, is a lot easier, because it's designed to be such, from day one. I think implementing driverless cars with normal drivers on the road in a sprawling kind of old city is extremely challenging, and I wouldn't use the word impossible, but I'm talking about true driverless cars, but I would say it's nigh on impossible.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, thank you for the explanation. So we have our last question. How do you think 5G can benefit healthcare?
So one of the kind of use cases that we talked about earlier was in healthcare, was in a hospital. So a big problem in hospitals is things go missing, equipment goes missing, and it's not necessarily that equipment gets stolen. Some equipment does get stolen, but it gets misplaced. It just gets misplaced. The audits, the amount of money that the hospitals have to spend on audits of equipment is quite high. The amount of, obviously, equipment that goes lost and therefore results in having to purchase new equipment is actually quite high as well. So it's quite easy to actually tag equipment, which is IP based, and pardon me, and using private 5G. You could do this on Wi-Fi as well, but if we use private 5G, then it goes across campuses as well, and it can actually apply to equipment that might be taken outside, such as wheelchairs, for example, on a campus. So a good use case is asset tracking. Yeah, effective asset tracking and real-time alerts. So there are some high-value assets that can be tagged. So we can implement some border control with private 5G as well, and say that if this asset is leaving the building, give us an alert. Shut the doors, lock the doors, right? Maybe not as extreme as that, but inform security, for example. So that's just one aspect. Yeah, that's just one aspect of a use case in healthcare. I think just one more use case, which actually you can do quite effectively with, you can do fairly effectively with Wi-Fi as well. So it works on both. But again, we'll benefit from the low latency of private 5G in this is to understand where people are within the building. So we can see, using people's mobiles, potentially we can see where they are in the building, and we can see where they congregate, and therefore, with regards to COVID, we can put some rules in to say, okay, well, there's an alert in this area because there's more than 6 people or more, X people that have congregated close to one another. Let's do something about that because that's a health alert. So and again, due to low latency, we can make AI based decisions around that. We don't have to have a person sitting there watching a control panel to actually make a decision on that.
Yeah, so if our healthcare system can utilize 5G, patients can often get treated sooner and have access to like specialists otherwise not available. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
yeah. And thank you, Amir. Very well explained for every questions we have. And so today's webinar also comes to an end, and it's great to learn from Amir's experiences and knowledge around the cloud and 5G. Thank you all for joining as well. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us at info@azure.net, and we hope to speak with you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, everyone.
guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.